Hi guys, I'm going to show you all the things you need to know about FL Studio 20.5 in order to get started making music. I'm going to show you the main functions that I personally use. I'm not going to read through the manual and give you an overload of information. This way it'll be a lot less intimidating starting off. So when you first load up the program, it'll look something like this. On the left here we have the browser. This is where you'll find a lot of samples you'll be using. In the default version you'll have this packs folder where you'll have various samples to start off with. There's some cymbals. Up here we have a master volume and master pitch, things you most likely won't be touching. Right here we have a play button, a stop button, a record button. This box right here controls the tempo of the track you're making. This bar controls song position, but I personally have never used it that much. Here we have a metronome and some general recording and playback functions that aren't entirely important at the moment. So to start off, I'm going to open the channel rack. So for me, it is right here, view channel rack. And here is what pops up for me. I am using a minimal template just to simplify things, but you'll probably have a few samples already loaded here. So the way this works is that you'll have a sample or an instrument here. And in these channels, you'll be able to basically write a pattern or a loop, which you can put into the playlist to make a track. So to load up an instrument, I'm going to go ahead and press this plus here. And I'll use FL Keys, which is just a basic piano plugin, just to show you around. So each one of these little squares is a 16th note. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, it'll be playing each quarter note. So I want to show you how panning works. So channel panning is going to control if it comes out of the left speaker, the right speaker, or if it is centered. So by default it is centered, but if I bring it all the way to the left, if you're wearing headphones, you should be able to somewhat hear that. And now I'm on the right. Right here we just have a channel volume. Pretty basic. And if you ever need to reset a knob, just right click on it and press reset. So I want to remove these quarter notes I put in. So I'm going to right click the FL keys and just press cut. So this removes those notes I put into that channel. And I can also right click into different channels and press paste. So it's a basic cut and paste function. So to open the piano roll, I'll right click the FL keys and press piano roll. Now we're in the piano roll. I'm not going to show you too much in this because it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically we have the step system. Here we have the ability to write all melodies, bass lines, chords, and things like that. FL Studio has a really nice piano roll. I like it a lot more than different programs. So right here you can see the note you're on. If you double click it, there'll be some more functions like velocity, release. These are things I don't really touch, but I can get more into it later if you guys would like. These dark lines show what bar you're on. So this is bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, bar 4. And then it is divided into 16th notes with the somewhat darker lines representing each quarter note. So I'm going to go ahead and write some random notes in just for a loop. One thing I should mention is up at the top left here, we have a pattern mode and a song mode. Pattern mode is going to loop the pattern. So right now we are on pattern 1. And song mode is going to play the song through the playlist. And it's not playing because we don't have something in the playlist yet. So right now we're using pattern 1. There are a few different ways to put this into the playlist. With it selected right here, I can just click and it will appear on the playlist. Alternatively, we have this bar right here and I can just drag it straight from here. One way of switching between patterns is to drag up and down on this pattern selector. Whenever I want to make a new pattern, just to keep myself somewhat organized, I right click it and find next empty. You do have the ability to name and color patterns, but I prefer not to and just find next empty, no naming, because it tends to slow me down, and no matter how hard I try, I realistically won't be too organized when making something. So before I move on, I want to show some quick little shortcuts that are useful in the piano roll. If you hold in Control and hold in the left mouse button, it'll make a box appear, and this way you can select notes. So these will be red when they're selected. Now let's say I want this to go for another bar. I can hold in shift and click and just drag it to be right there. Fantastic. There are also some levels right here you can set for things like velocity. If you click right here, it will change what levels you are altering. So we can be changing the note pan, note velocity, note release, and things like that, channel panning, channel volume, channel pitch, all from right here. I tend to only touch the velocity function. So just like many programs, if I do that same control drag, now if I go into the piano roll on a different channel, I can just simply do control V, and the same notes will appear there on the separate channel. I'll go ahead and remove those. The playlist is pretty straightforward. It's similar to the piano roll. You have the same bars, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I like to think of this as just a big old canvas. You can try your best to stay organized with these tracks. You can right click them. You can change the colors, icons, rename them. However, you might be different than me, but my projects turn into a mess regardless. So tool-wise, we have this little pencil tool where we can click. And since I have pattern 1 here selected, it's going to cause pattern 1 to appear. Now, if I want to delete this mess, if I hold right click, it's going to automatically use the delete tool. And I can just drag over and get those out of the way. Alternatively, we have this paint tool. I tend not to use this much. Basically, when you click, it adds that pattern, and when you move your mouse, they will appear. However, I tend to use the slow process of just putting down the patterns. When I want them to be repeated for a longer amount, I'll do just what we did in the piano roll. Control left click, drag, hold shift, click, and move it there. Right here we have a delete tool that's just going to delete it. Right here is a mute tool, so let's say I'm in this song mode right here. Now if I use the mute tool and click, it will gray out a little bit, and when I play you will not hear that piece. So that's useful if you're experimenting with things. This tool right here is the slip tool. It's actually pretty interesting. So I can shorten this to just one bar by dragging right here. Now let's say I really wanted those 2 notes right here, and I don't feel like using this method of dragging it out, then dragging it in. With the slip tool, I can do that same process much quicker. I find this to be mostly useful for vocal chops if I want to quickly change a sample around. I'll probably get into that more in future tutorials. Right here is a select tool. I never really use this because I just hold in control and drag, and that is much faster. This is a zoom tool. I also don't use that. To get around, I drag this bar up here to make it longer lengthwise. I hold in the middle button to pan around. And I usually don't need to zoom up and down, but this button right here allows me to do that. So you should have a pretty comfortable understanding of the playlist. Now let's say I want to put some effects on this piano sound. So there's a few different ways to do this. I would do it by pressing FL keys. And when this is open, I press Control L, and then it pops up here. If I want to move it around, I can hold Alt and use my arrow keys. Alternatively, there's this useful function where if I right click here and say assign to new instrument track, it will lock it as an instrument track, which means that I can just drag here to change it around. If I end up deleting this piano sound, it will give me the option to also delete the channel, which is pretty useful. So the mixer looks a little bit daunting, but it's pretty straightforward. We have another panning knob that was present in the channels. Right here is a basic volume up and down knob. Here is a reverse polarity function, which I've honestly never used. A swap left and right channels function, which I have also never used. this knob here does stereo separation. So if I want my sound to be very spread out in the headphones, I will turn it this way, 100% separated. But if I want it to be very close and in the center of the speakers or headphones, I will merge it like so. Here's a track latency function. It pretty much does this all automatically, so I've never touched it. This button sets if this certain mixer track is recording. And right here, you have these little virtual cables. So you see this cable comes out here and goes into the master. The master track comprises the entirety of all the sounds in the song. So I can right click here and rename this to be, say, piano sounds. Let's say I have a bunch of different random piano sounds and I want to route them all through this piano sounds and then put some certain effects on those and then run that through the master. So I can right click under piano sounds and say route to this track. Now notice I did route to this track and not route to this track only. Now the sound is outputting to the master and to piano sounds. So basically the master is getting twice the volume of this piano sound, which we do not want. So to change that, I can either click here and the cable will break, or when I make that connection, I can just say route to this track only. Fantastic. Right here on this side, we have 10 slots where we can put on various effects, equalizers, and things you will slowly learn. So if I just click here on slot 1, let's say I want to put reverb on that piano sound. So I put the reverb on, and I'll turn up the wet knob so it's very easy to hear. So now you can hear the very reverby sound of that track. So you can put a bunch of different things in this. Let's say I want to put an EQ on. I'll explain this more later. And just make it an awful sound that is probably blowing out your speakers. Beautiful. Alright, if I want to delete one of those, I can press right here and just press delete. I can also replace it right here and select something else. And there you go, that's the mixer. So one thing I want to note, I was using a piano plugin for this, just the plain FL keys, but you can use sounds. So if we go into the packs right here, the drums, and say I want to use kicks, we have a selection of kicks, and if we want to put one of those in, I'm just going to drag it right in here. There you go. Now let's say I want a different kick in for whatever reason. I can drag it here, and another way to do this is to put it right in this gray area here. Now it's going to pop up there as well, and I can do all the same piano roll things to that as I could to the piano. So we clearly didn't really write a masterpiece today. I hope I gave you guys a good grasp on understanding the software so you can start playing around and experimenting with making music. I'm gonna make a series of tutorials so you can understand specific pieces of music production. For example, I think I might make a tutorial on this equalizer right here and how to understand that and use that well to make a good song. If you have suggestions for videos I should make in the future, it'd be great if you could let me know. It would be super helpful if you could like and subscribe. But besides that, I'm Napoleonic Music. I hope you learned something from that tutorial today.